the quiet sci-fi drama After Yang, a family suffers a loss when their human-like android suddenly breaks down. They each process and grieve the absence in different ways and learn there was more to their android than they'd initially realized. The film is beautiful and introspective, and it stars Colin Farrell and Jodie Turner-Smith as the parents of an adopted child who are faced with deep existential conundrums. The very talented filmmaker Kogonada wrote and directed it. I'm Aisha Harris, and today we're talking about After Yang on Pop Culture Happy Hour from NPR.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Discovery Plus. How does it feel to chase a sports legacy, fight for justice, or compete in a competitive table-setting competition? On Discovery Plus, you can stream hundreds of human stories, from new originals like Werner Herzog's Last Exit Space to acclaimed masterpieces like RGB, Man on Wire, and Jiro Dreams of Sushi. It's the streaming home of documentaries, plus so much more. Discovery Plus. Start your free trial. Terms apply.
Here with me today is the host of NPR's Book of the Day podcast and a reporter for the Culture Desk, Andrew Limbong. Hi, Andrew. Welcome back.
Hey, Aisha. How you doing?
Good. It's so great to have you here. So, After Yang is set in a not-so-distant future where people commute in pods and purchase human-like androids as family members. Yang, played by Justin H. Min, is one of those androids, and he belongs to Jake and Kyra, played by Colin Farrell and Jodie Turner-Smith. Now, the couple bought Yang so he could be a quote-unquote big brother to their Chinese adopted daughter, Mika, who's played by Malaya Emma Chandrawijaya. The intent was for Yang to provide companionship and a connection to her culture through what they refer to as Chinese fun facts. When Yang stops working, Jake and Mika set out to find someone who can fix him. This proves to be a challenge, though, as Jake bounces between two people who want to use Yang's parts for their own purposes. Russ, a questionable technician played by Richie Coster, and Cleo, a museum researcher played by Sarita Chatterjee. And in the midst of this journey, Jake discovers Yang's memory bank, which leads him to Yang's friend Ada, played by Haley Lou Richardson. After Yang was written and directed by Kogonada, adapting from the short story Saying Goodbye to Yang by Alexander Weinstein. The film is in theaters now and streaming on Showtime. So Andrew, what did you think of After Yang?
Okay, I'll be real. I watched it once and I didn't like it that much.
Okay.
And then I watched it again and then I loved it. I don't know, maybe it's like one of those like twofers because the world is so immaculately conceived, right? Mm-hmm. There are sort of implications that there was like a war between US and China. There's like a poster that hangs somewhere in like the background and we're not really sure what happens or who wins or whatever. Mm-hmm. But like the architecture is pristine. Everybody's decked out in these sort of like Pan-Asian fits that go like really hard. I gotta say, we gotta like manifest this. It's all like dystopian, but nice to look at. Yeah. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's like a really unsettling vibe that I enjoyed the second time around watching it. I really connected with Jake, played by Colin Farrell, who really, my guy's putting in work in this movie, dude.
Yeah, he's great. I love him in this. Yeah. Now, you said you watched it a second time. Like, what made you want to watch it a second time?
I don't know. I think my vibes just weren't right the first time I watched it. Mm-hmm. And then the second time in, I just like really appreciated it more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually was really all in for it. I think part of it is that I kind of knew what we were going into because I'd seen Kogonada's previous film, Columbus. Kogonada is very much interested in the mise-en-scène and the aesthetic and like the architecture because in that movie, John Cho plays the son of an architecturalist. And
an architect?
An architect.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's early where I am right now. An architect. And much of that film is actually the John Cho character and Haley Lou Richardson, who is also in that movie, sort of walking around throughout this town, the city, and looking at architecture. So like I was kind of expecting a similar, very quiet vibe. And so obviously there's levels to sci-fi and fantasy. And I appreciate the Star Wars and the things that are more obviously sci-fi, but I think I'd drawn even more to the things like this, this Ex Machina, where it's like, it's sci-fi, but it still feels grounded in a way or feels like our world. And you have to kind of figure out like how far into the future is this world. So I really liked it. But I can also see sort of the criticisms that have been made about the film in terms of like maybe not having enough information sometimes about like the fact that there's some allusions to China and things that have happened. Like, and where is this set? Are we in the US? Are we in China? Are we in a completely different?
We never know, right?
We never, as far as I know, there's no sort of hint. And they commute in these pods. So like, and these pods are in sort of these sort of Space Mountain-y sort of 2001 sort of tunnels. So you can't tell exactly where they are. I really love the fact that, Kogonada has said in an interview that often when we have these sort of android stories, the drive of the story is an android wanting to become human. But what he was interested in was more like, okay, the humans around the android realizing that the android was actually more human than they thought. What did you think of sort of that? I know you mentioned before we, sat down and record this, the tea scene. And so a little background, Colin Farrell's character is like a tea connoisseur and he like owns a tea shop. Do you want to talk a little bit about that scene and sort of what it meant for you?
Yeah, it's so funny. He loves tea, right? You really feel like the juice of like why he loves tea, and it has less to do with how tea tastes and more to do like the history and like the work that goes into it and da 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 da. But Yang, he's around to like give you like the Wikipedia facts about tea, right? Like tea was started in whatever year, right? And it was farmed by XYZ. And it's almost heartbreaking watching Yang listen to Colin Farrell talk about tea with such passion, and tea being like a very Chinese rooted drink, right? And Yang realizing like, I can't do that. I'm never going to have that. I can't have that juice. It's really wrenching to watch. This android is like disconnected with like his identity, right? And there's a lot of talk about, this movie being what it means for an AI to be human and all those questions. Because of the cloud of war that's hanging overhead of this movie, I couldn't help but think about like, it's also kind of like almost like a refugee tale, right? Like this guy doesn't know, is so disconnected from his houses or his home or whatever. Like, and the question of is he human or not aside, it almost doesn't matter. It's because it's this thing that's feeling something and it's feeling very lost.
Yeah. We have a clip that I will say it's hard to find good audio for this because there's so many silences and moments, but let's actually listen to a clip from that tea scene.
I wish I felt something deeper about tea. I wish I had a real memory of tea in China, of a place, of a time. I think this would... What? Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
That is sort of the crux of the whole movie. That is the heart of the movie. And to sort of see him stopping himself and being like, let me hold back here. Like, even that in itself is sort of a human quality, right? Of like realizing what you might say and then pulling back in that moment, which I think is just really, really fascinating to watch.
I gotta say, when I was watching this scene, I was like drinking some Lipton-ass tea. So it's just like, oh yeah, really? And then it's like, yeah, I don't know if I can taste.
Okay, first of all, you need to up your tea game. Lipton, really? Yeah. Man, Andrew, you and I can talk. I love tea.
Sorry, yeah.
But so what do you think about sort of what this is? We mentioned it already, but Yang is there in part because the couple wanted him to sort of give their child, Mika, fun facts, but also to sort of connect her with the culture. But it's like, well, of course, just giving fun facts is not the same as giving culture. But I didn't know exactly how to think about this. And I'm curious, what you took away from sort of what's suggested about transracial adoptees.
Yeah. They're bad parents, right? Like, I mean, I don't like...
They're naive.
Yeah, they're naive.
At best, they're naive. Yeah.
And they think they're doing a good job, but they picked the most hands-off way to do this.
Yeah.
To teach this kid about her culture of origin. And I think a lot of the movie is, Jake sort of trying to learn to be a father, right? Because he has to bring his daughter around and he's sort of like learning how to connect with her by way of taking care of her robot, essentially like her babysitter, right?
Yeah.
Whatever happened, whatever world we're living in, I couldn't quite tell if like this was like the norm of this world.
Right.
Because these technosapiens are like, not a dime a dozen, but it seems like pretty common, right? He's like a refurbished sort of version of one. And so I get the sense that whatever socioeconomic class they are, they're sort of like keeping up with the Joneses,
Yeah, it's maybe this isn't obvious because I don't know how many people are familiar with Jodie Turner-Smith. So you have a white parent played by Colin Farrell, and then a Black British parent who's played by Jodie Turner-Smith, and they've adopted.
Great in the J. Crew catalog for the
my
holiday,
God,
2021.
yes.
Did you see that?
They're kind of like a picture-perfect couple.
Yeah.
It's very like, this is the world today.
Yes. I would buy clothes from that lookbook.
Exactly. But I know you've mentioned that like there are moments where it does get a little too heavy-handed for you.
Yeah. This movie is so subtle. Like we've said, we've mentioned how quiet it is. There's sort of like lingering shots. Except there's like one or two lines. A character will be like, oh, so this is about memory. Right? Or it's like, oh, this is about what it means to be Asian. It's like, okay, I don't need we don't need to like spell it out, Like I'm bought in. It's fine. You don't need to tell me what this movie's about. It only happens a few times, but it happens enough that I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, I think that's a valid response to that. I will say one sort of little touch that I really appreciated about the film was the way that there's a repetition happening in the dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
By repetition, I mean they'll say a line and then immediately afterwards you will hear that same line said again. After kind of rewatching it, I was like, oh, I think this is just hearing it from one side of the person's memory and then hearing it from the other person in the conversation, their memory of it. Mm-hmm. It's like a meeting of their two memories. And so I really loved those sort of touches that happen. But it happens, I think, at the right moments, the moments where you're supposed to feel as though we are in these memories, we are in these different viewpoints, and how just so subtly they're just a little bit different. They're heard a little bit different. They're said a little bit differently, but it's the same line. And I think like that sort of subtlety is what I really, really appreciated about this film.
Yeah, it was really unsettling in a nice way.
Also, I feel like we have to shout out the opening credit sequence, which is just probably one of the best opening credit sequences I've seen in a long time. Because this is, again, where we get to the, like, what is this world? Because we have all these, there's like, I guess, a regular competition where families compete in their homes doing these like dances. It's kind of like Dance Dance Revolution. And you get to see some of the characters who come in later in the film, like Sarita Charity's character, like with her family. And the song is called Welcome to Family of Four.
Welcome families of four to our monthly dance off. We have over 30,000 families competing tonight. Are you ready? Stay in sync.
And I really enjoyed that.
It's so fun.
It's probably the most animated that this film gets because the rest of the film is super subdued.
Because it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
What did you think, though, about the Ada character, Haley Lu Richardson?
I mean, I think Haley Lu Richardson is fantastic in pretty much everything I've seen her in. I appreciate how her mystery sort of unravels in these really affecting ways. We see her often through Jake watching Yang's memories. It kind of ties things together and reveals things that you don't necessarily expect to see at the beginning of this movie. And I just think she's great. What did you think of her?
So on first view, like I said, I thought she was giving off big, like, manic pixie dream girl energy.
I can see that.
She was sort of there for Yang to like as like a weird like goal, right? To like if like Colin Farrell can see Yang connect with this woman in a romantic way, it sort of like means something or whatever. And so it sort of rubbed me the wrong way. But when I watched it again, I think her storyline has these payoffs that sort of debunk, the manic pixie dream girl vibe and weaves into the broader story in a more like thoughtful way.
Yeah, I think for the most part, we learned more about all of the characters. Not so much Jodie Turner-Smith's character. I think she's there, but this isn't really her journey.
I don't know if it's too much to get into it, but there was that she does have some conversations with Yang.
Yes, that's another great scene. It kind of mimics the tea scene that Yang has with Jake. It's like her own version of that.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess now that I think about it, the one character we don't really learn that much about is Mika, which could have been interesting to see a little bit more of her perspective because she is the reason why they got Yang in the first place. And like, there's a lot of talking about her. Like, we know she's sad when Yang breaks down. I feel like so much of the sadness is conferred onto the Jake character. But, I really like this movie. It sounds like Andrew, after a rewatch, you really like the movie too.
Yes. Yeah.
I always say this, but like, it's a nice, crisp, like 90-ish minute movie.
Oh, love it. I love a 90-minute movie. Yeah.
Well, we want to know what you think about After Yang. You can find us at facebook.com/PCHH and on Twitter at PCHH. And that brings us to the end of our show. Thanks so much for being here, Andrew Limbaugh.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you for listening to Pop Culture Happy Hour from NPR. This episode was produced by Ramel Wood and edited by Jessica Reedy. And Hello Come In provides the music you are bobbing your head to right now. I'm Aisha Harris, and we'll see you all tomorrow when we'll be talking about the new Disney Pixar animated feature, Turning Red.
This message comes from Cast Media with the new anthology series, Scoundrel: History's Forgotten Villains. Every episode, learn about the rotten and forgotten parts of history, its bad guys, villains, and their crimes. Listen to Scoundrel wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey friends, Linda Holmes here. I'd love it if you subscribed to Pop Culture Happy Hour Plus. You'll get a sponsor-free listen and, this is key, you'll be supporting our show. Subscribe now at plus.npr.org/happyhour.